Good morning, everyone. I see that we already have 34 participants. And before we start with the formal presentation, I'd like to leave you with some best practices to keep in mind through the event. So please be sure that you are muted during the webinar. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat box. We will looking at the questions in the QA session. And finally, a reminder, this session is recorded and it will be uploaded in the EIC community. So if you don't want to appear, please turn off the camera. Well, already 35 going on. So welcome everyone to the second day of the EIC Summit. And thank you for choosing the learning and training track and joining us this morning to learn how your company can reach carbon neutrality. If you want to know the difference between the concepts of carbon neutrality, climate neutrality, net zero, or climate positive, this is the place to be. For those of you meeting me for the first time, my name is Raúl Daussin, and I'm a consultant at Ramboll in Copenhagen. Ramboll is a management consultancy and engineering company, and it's part of the Greenhouse Gas Neutral Acceleration Consortium that implements the GHG pilot program on behalf of the European Innovation Council. Last April, the EIC kicked off the Greenhouse Gas program, and so far we have organized the 6 webinars you can see in the screen. If you're interested in the program, please check the EIC Greenhouse Gas program website. Today's agenda will start with welcoming remarks from Youssef, the EIC ambassador, and a presentation by the EIC Greenhouse Gas Program by Barbara De Angelis, the project officer at the European Innovation Council. After that, I will ask everyone who wants to turn on the cameras to have a family photo, and we will start the technical part of the webinar with Carlos García Borreguero and Mathieu Crivelier from CO2 Logic. At the end, we will have the Q&A session, where we will ask all the questions that you have on carbon neutrality. If you are using social media, please use the hashtag EUEIC. We also have a hashtag on EUEIC Summit and the Twitter handle EUEIC. Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Youssef to welcome us all together. Please, the floor is yours. Youssef, are you connected?
Yes, now I'm unmuted. So good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here in this the second day of the summit. It's an amazing summit so far with a lot of awards, but a lot also of inspiring people walking around. I'm at this moment not in the summit. I'm at this moment in the Netherlands. So welcome. My name is Youssef. I'm the CEO of Algisonic, but also I have been the last 2 years busy with designing the EIC. So before we go further during this day, I would like to give you a small background information, maybe. Like the EIC have been founded to create unicorn. We also call it the unicorn factory. And then is the question, what has this unicorn factory to do with green gases reductions? And the answer is, we really believe if you would like to create impact around the world, it needs to come from the entrepreneurs as well. So to create this Green Deal, to reach the Green Deal targets, we really need great entrepreneurs which will adjust and scale their own innovations and technologies and companies to a level on to have a worldwide impact. I think that's why we are having also this great program, and that's also our role as entrepreneurs is not only to sell and to make profit. It's really to create the positive impact around the world we can do with our companies if we will do it on the right scale and if we will do it in the right way. I hope you will enjoy the meeting today. And yeah, Barbara, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Youssef. Thank you, Raúl. Thank you, Youssef, for this inspiring word. And of course, we need the entrepreneurs. And welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. It's very nice to see that so many of you joined today and are interested in our activities. I will now explain you a little more what is the GAG program about. So basically, what we aim to do with the GAG program is to guide the beneficiaries toward this journey in the achievement of carbon neutrality. So as you may know, the European Union committed in 2019 with the European Green Deal to high ambitious standards, and basically Europe wants to become the first carbon neutral continent by 2050. In order to do this, this summer, basically the Green Deal has been written into law and entered into force with the European Climate Law. And we will see that new wave of green regulatory initiative will come forward. And what we want to do with the GAG program is to try to anticipate this new legal framework, but also we want to help you in reducing your carbon footprint, because we think that is good and will help you in strengthening your company's public reputation. And at the same time, you will improve energy efficiency and resource efficiency. And in addition to this, this program will help you in answering the increasing demand for green technologies. And in this way, you will gain an edge over the competition. So basically what we are doing in order to achieve all of this objective is to guiding you through webinars. And so we had a set of webinars during the last months, and we will have the last of this year, the 15th December, that will be about electric and hybrid vehicles. And but we have many pipelines for the new year. So I invite you to visit the European Innovation Council community website and to have a look at the new opportunities we are offering. Also, apart from webinars, we will have, we are having co-creation events, and the next session of today will be about it. We are also a tool that will help you in assessing your carbon footprint, and after filling it, you will have a wide range of solutions you could adopt in order to reduce the impact of your company. So, I mean, you can find more information in the EIC community website, and I really invite you to have a look at it, to keep an eye on it in the next months. And so thank you. So basically, I've told you everything. This is the GAG program in a nutshell, and I leave you to the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Youssef. And just before we got into the webinar for the latecomers, we asked you could spare us with us 30 seconds and turn on your camera, give us a big smile. We'll have a family picture that we will also post it in our social media and in our website. I think you have to stop sharing, Christoph, so we can have like the full quadricular, yeah. Wave or turn on your camera slowly, or saying hello a little bit more. Christoph, we get a
2, 1.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. I see lots of smiling faces. Now, actually, we can start with the technical part of the webinar with Carlos and Mathieu from CO2 Logic. So we can share the presentation again, and I'll let you to it when it's ready. The floor is yours, Carlos and Mathieu. You are muted, Mathieu.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Paul. So it's not about this slide. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Christophe. So we are Carlos and Mathieu. I will let Carlos introduce himself very quickly. So we are part of CO2 Logic, a little company that is assisting all kind of companies towards their climate neutrality targets. So that's the reason why we are going to explain you, provide you some insights on how you can do that. So for myself, I'm Mathieu Cribelier, and I'm working on this issue since 10 years.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mathieu, for the introduction. So I'm Carlos Garcia Borreguero, and I'm project director at CO2 Logic, and I will be co-presenting this session on carbon neutrality together with Mathieu. So I will now let Mathieu start with his presentation.
Thank you. Before that, yeah, a very quick insight regarding the carbon footprint tool. That's something that Barbara has already mentioned before, and that's something quite important. Just to remind you that this tool is fully available now, that you can really use it now, and it has been designed in order to help and facilitate all the GHG members to do this carbon footprint calculation. What is interesting with this tool is that it will help you to easily calculate your footprint, but after that to simulate the mitigation potential. That is quite important, because when you are calculating, then you need to understand the potential in terms of reduction that you can reach. And it will help you to promote after that your solution via the EIC community and inspire others. That's the target, at least. And at the end, it's not a tool that will calculate only once your carbon footprint, but that will be something that will help you to track and monitor your emissions year after year, because generally when you are calculating your carbon footprint, it's for 1 year of activity. So every year you will have the possibility after that to just recalculate and understand where you are in terms of reduction trajectory along your climate journey. So don't hesitate, feel free. The tool is available and already live. So, but today, so the idea is to provide you all the, let's say, major insights that you need to understand what is behind this concept of carbon neutrality that you might have heard quite a lot since the, I would say the previous month, but even the previous years. And so we're gonna explain you what is behind this carbon neutrality by introducing you first what is the climate journey, because before talking about carbon neutrality, you need to understand what is the full climate journey that is before targeting this neutrality. Then to explain you, as Raoul introduced, the different claims that might exist between carbon neutrality, net zero, and carbon positive, and what are the frameworks behind. And then Carlos will explain you a bit more the mechanism behind the carbon offsetting and the voluntary markets that exist, and all the projects that are related to that. And we're gonna provide you some examples of what is exactly, concretely, an offsetting project on film. So regarding the climate journey, this concept, before explaining you what is behind, is something that you have heard about, and in fact, why? Because in fact, everybody now care about carbon neutrality. So you have the governments, the trade partners, the shareholders, and they are now all taking actions, mainly since the Paris Agreement, even if you have a dynamic that have started before, but since the Paris Agreement, everything has accelerated. And so now you have many initiatives that are live regarding the climate change and how to tackle that. Customers and employees are increasingly expect governments, but also companies now, to commit to sustainability, and they are going to vote with their feet and wallets. And that's something that is not only about declaring that it's something important. We can see that now in the actions. To provide you some insights, figures, you can already see that for the trade partners, most half of the world's GDP now is covered by net zero targets. So that's huge, and it was not that 10 years ago. So that's really important and significant now. The shareholders that are now playing a more and more important part in let's say, requesting the companies to start their action in terms of climate reduction. And there are now more than 50 trillion of assets managed by them, investors, in the climate action initiative. That is one of the most important one. You have employees that are more and more requesting their own employers, their own companies, to take a public position on societal issues relevant to their business, and climate change is part of that. And at the end, the customers. And you can see that more and more the youngest ones more and more taking action and are going to spend more for sustainable products. So there is an increasing share of market related to sustainable product, eco-design product, low carbon product, and so on. And that's the reason why now, when we are talking about climate, we are not talking about only communication, we are really talking about strategy for companies. So behind this carbon neutrality, first the climate journey, in order to make you understand what is behind this carbon neutrality. The first step is quite important, and that's the reason why the tool has been designed by EIC, is you need to first measure your footprint to understand where you stand. After measuring, calculating that, then you need to understand what should be your ambition in terms of reducing your own footprint. And so that's the reason why you need a roadmap that will be modeled through different initiatives like the science-based target. Then the step is when you have the theoretical roadmap, you need to operationalize that. So you need to take action. So that's the action part. And then the fourth step will be more on financing climate action in order to go a bit more global. And that's the moment where you're gonna start speaking about carbon neutrality. And then you have the communication aspect that you could start by explaining the achievement behind. So in terms of private sectors and the claim that are behind, we can categorize that into three categories: climate neutrality, net zero, and climate positive. Climate neutrality, in fact, is the first concept that you can target very quickly on the short term. So you have an impact, you have a commitment, credible commitment to reduce it, and you can already support global projects, certify global projects, in order to have a balance between what your activities have emitted and what you are going to contribute in terms of avoiding or sequestrating CO2 emissions. Net zero is a bit more on a midterm perspective. You're going to already have a quite important reduction in terms of GHG emissions, and you have enough reduced in order to counterbalance the remaining impacts by only projects that are going to remove CO2 emissions, GHG emissions. So it's not only about avoiding GHG emissions versus a theoretical baseline, but it's really having removed the CO2 emissions. So you have a balance between that. So it's a bit more ambitious than climate neutrality. And then climate positive is something a little more complex because not that well defined, but you can see behind that generally the idea is just to go a step beyond. So you are going to be climate neutral, and you are going to, in fact, going a bit more in terms of supporting global climate projects by avoiding or sequestrating more than you have emitted. And you can talk about climate positive, even if sometimes companies talk about climate negative for the same aspect. So that's the reason why sometimes this concept is a bit uncertain in terms of what is behind. So for the carbon neutrality today, you can see here a theoretical baseline of what could be the GHG emissions in yellow. So carbon neutrality could be, on a short-term perspective, achieved quite quickly. And then starting from that, you have commitment to reduce. So you're gonna see that in the dotted red lines, your GHG footprint is going to reduce a bit more, significantly more than the theoretical aspect. And so that's the part of decarbonization of carbon footprint along the value chain. It's not only your CO2 footprint in your side, but it's all the value chain that is behind. And you still have these residual emissions in green. If you want to achieve net zero it's in the dotted line, theoretically, is that you don't emit GHG emission anymore. In the reality, you can see that you will have, for this net zero claim, maybe in fact still CO2 emissions. So it's not the theoretical red dotted line, but it's above the gray, and you still have this footprint because it's very complex to achieve net zero in the reality right now, or even on a midterm perspective, but you can at least reduce enough in order to have the possibility to counterbalance with carbon removal projects. So that's the net zero. And then the climate positive is when your GHG footprint is still reduced, not really net zero, but you have removed more than you have generated. So the different claims and framework very quickly. In fact, you have already different initiatives. So you have, I would say, today only one framework that is currently existing, that is the PACE 2060. When I say one framework, I would say a public framework. So it's a UK norm. It has been updated lastly in 2014. Just for your information, there will be an ISO norm that will be live at the beginning of 2023 that will be the next reference, you have already some initiatives like the science-based targets, net zero targets, that is quite recent. You have some initiatives from the UN with the Climate Neutral Now pledge in 2020, and you have other aspects. But just for information, the reference for the companies globally will be this new ISO norm in 2023. And last, regarding some examples of companies that are claiming about carbon neutrality, net zero, and climate positive. You can see for the carbon neutrality, McKinsey, Signify, and Delivery Hero. Net zero is, let's say now the most trendy, the trendiest one, with Amazon, Swiss Re, Google, and some companies are already going this step beyond, like Unilever, IKEA, and Microsoft, that are already talking about climate positive because they have a significant effort in terms of supporting, financing climate projects regarding their real impact. So I will let the floor now to Carlos.
Thank you, Mathieu. Now we are going to dig a bit more into the mechanism behind what we call carbon offsetting or carbon compensation. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, why is compensation an important part of our climate strategy, a corporate climate strategy? First of all, when you offset your emissions, it means that you put a price on every emissions that you create. So you internalize a price on the carbon, and this will lead to it will drive your emission reductions decisions. Secondly, it creates measurable impact globally on climate change, of course. By supporting a climate project, you reduce global emissions, but also locally, as the climate project have local benefits to local population. And these local benefits are generally assessed against each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals proposed by the United Nations. And then last but not least, it's a key milestone on our climate journey towards the 2050 net zero target. So how does carbon compensation work? So it's let's say in 4 steps. So the first step, a company assesses its carbon emissions along its value chain. So it's what we call the carbon footprint. So it's allowed by, you can do it yourself with the tool developed by the EIC. So you assess the carbon footprint. Then you can identify the hotspots and decide on where you can reduce these emissions. So you will invest in energy efficiency measures, in renewable energy measures, in low carbon transport modes, etc. But there will still be some remaining emissions that you cannot reduce yet. So you can invest money in a climate project that will reduce this amount of emissions elsewhere. This is the third step. And in exchange of what, you will receive some verified and certified carbon certificates, carbon credits that will be used to offset your carbon footprint. So what are carbon credits? There are certificates that are that result from a climate project located somewhere else. And it corresponds to 1 ton of CO2 equivalent that is reduced or removed from the atmosphere. So we call it like, generally speaking, like CO2 emissions, but there are many different types of greenhouse gases, like methane, for example. And each of the greenhouse gas has a different impact on global warming. So we convert all these greenhouse gases to what we call the ton of CO2 equivalent. So 1 carbon credit corresponds to 1 ton of CO2 equivalent. So it covers different types of greenhouse gases that are removed or reduced. And finally, these carbon credits are issued to a publicly available registry, and that can be traded. So from one registry to another registry until it is cancelled or retired by the company that use it for a carbon offsetting claim. So from the project, so the climate project point of view, how do projects qualify for carbon credits? So it's really important that they have to meet 5 really important criteria against which they are evaluated. So the first criteria is that their emission reduction has to be real. So of course, it has to be taken place. The second criteria is that the project needs to be additional. It means that it has to go beyond what is already planned. For example, in the local legislation, it has to be go beyond what has been what is considered as financially viable. So it means that you need to prove that the revenues from the carbon credits will help the implementation of the project. If the project is already profitable by itself, then it's not additional, it will take place anyway. So it's important to prove this additionality of the project. It has to be measurable, so you need to use official and let's say and verified methodologies and tools to measure the carbon emissions that are reduced or removed. And these reductions have to be verified by a third party, an independent auditor. And finally, the reductions have to be permanent. The CO2 has a lifetime, a life that is in the atmosphere that is over 1 century. So if the CO2 is reduced for a short period of time, but then is released, then it has no net impact on climate change. So you need to prove that this reduction is permanent and it will last over more than 100 years. So how are these projects certified? So you have some steps before the implementation of the project, and then some steps that are that occur during the lifetime of the project. So first, you will need to you are the project design phase, so the project hasn't started yet. So you have first to estimate the emission reductions that the project will lead to. You have to demonstrate the additionality of the project. So you need to prove that it's really important that the project gets carbon credits in order to be viable. And you have to really describe what we call the monitoring plan. Say how does the project will how do you monitor the emission reductions through the lifetime of the project. So all this information will be collected and gathered in the what we call the PDD, the project design document. Then you will have a local stakeholder consultation with all the local stakeholders, so, municipalities, people that will work on the project, local population, to make sure that there is no negative impact of the project on the field. And all this information will be validated. This is the validation phase by a third party, so an auditor. And this will be then, the project will be registered by a voluntary carbon standard, official carbon standard. Then the project will start and you will start implementing your monitoring plan. So this is the monitoring phase, and periodically you will write a monitoring report every year, for example, stating what has occurred during the monitoring period. And this monitoring plan, this monitoring report will be verified by a third party. And this will lead to the issuance of the carbon credits to a publicly available registry. So to give you an overview on the carbon market, the trends, you can see here the evolution year by year, and you can see that it has almost doubled over the last 3 to 4 years. And this increase on the market is mostly driven by 2 types of projects. In gray, you see the renewable energy project, mostly wind energy project, and in green, what we call the NBS, nature-based solutions project. So in dark green, it's called a RED+. So these are forest conservation projects that take place mostly in the Amazonian zone. And in light green, you have other NBS, could be reforestation project that remove the CO2 emissions from the atmosphere. And regarding the demand and the type of the sectors that are using these carbon credits, you see here, this is from 2019. There is no update since then. So the image can change a little bit, but mostly you have 90% of the demand comes from 2 different sectors, the financial services and the chemical and petrochemical sectors, including oil and gas companies. And you see that the financial services has a strong demand for nature-based solutions credits, as they use more than 80% of the total nature-based solutions credits. So let me give you 2 examples of offsetting projects. So one first project is located in Zambia, and it's an agroforestry and forest conservation project. So the purpose of the project is to support farmers. Now it's a bit more than 10,000 farmers that are supported to change their agricultural practices. So they will have more carbon sequestration in the soils, but they will also avoid the deforesting because they will get more yield from their new agricultural practices. So you have both emission reduction from avoided deforestation, but also carbon removal through better soil sequestration. Another type of project is the Improved Cook Stove project in Burkina Faso. So here, the purpose of the project is to distribute improved cook stove that are much more efficient than previous cook stove that are used by the families. And this will help reduce the fuel consumption, so wood or charcoal consumption, by roughly 50%. So this will help reduce the production of charcoal, or it will also avoid the deforestation to create for the biomass to be used by the families. So it has distributed a bit more than 20,000 cook stoves in a region in Burkina Faso. And the total amount of CO2 that is avoided is almost 20,000 tons of CO2 per year. So now we can go back to the Q&A session. So I will leave the floor to Raul to moderate this Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you very much, Mathieu. That was an interesting overview of the definitions, carbon neutrality, the carbon neutral, the climate neutral, etc. So we have a better overview of what we mean when we mention these concepts and how actually these projects are offsetting carbon. Before we actually go into the Q&A, please, Christophe, can you show us the link to the questionnaire, satisfaction questionnaire? I will ask everyone who's maybe in a rush that cannot stay for the whole Q&A to fill the questionnaire, the satisfaction questionnaire. That's the only way we can see if we are doing well, if you like what we are explaining, and improve for other webinars. So with that, I will open the floor. We are more than 60 participants, so you can use the raise hand button in order to ask a question online, or I will be looking at the questions that you put in the chat. While you do all of that, and I ask Christophe to put the link to the satisfaction questionnaire also in the chat. The floor is open for those who want to raise the hand, but I have already 3 questions, so I will start with those. It says, Jean Fosson, it looks like the Kyoto Protocol CDM mechanism. What is the value for 1 carbon credit? Actually, I had this same question. So Carlos or Mathieu?
Yes, Raul, I can take this one. Exactly, Jayan, it's you're perfectly right. The mechanism is a kind of a copy. It's really strongly based on the CDM mechanism. So all the projects cycle is the same. The methodologies most of the time are the same, are the CDM methodologies. But for the voluntary carbon standards, there is a more focus on local impact. So, for example, the gold standard has a really strong focus on auditing what we call the co-benefits. So not only the CO2 emission reduction, but also the local on the impact on local jobs, the impact on health, etc. So they add a layer in the methodology on the evaluation of the impact on sustainable development. And to answer your question, what is the value for 1 carbon credit? It really depends on the type of the credit, the scale, the country, etc. But we will now it's roughly, on to give you an average, is between 10 and 20 euros per ton of CO2.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions, but I have a hand that's raised, Georg Brocksterman. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question. Georg, can you unmute yourself if you want to ask a question? Thank you.
Hello. Yes, hi. I would like to ask where's the best place to find reliable projects to offset? And the second question would be, if I have an own project I would like to certify, what are the platforms I should use to do that? Is that Vera or Gold Standard, or what are the most reliable standards here?
I can take this one too. Georg, thank you for this question. I see that you have already some knowledge about the market. So there is no such a platform. I mean, you don't have like the EUTS or the CDM under the Kyoto Protocol, like a centralized platform with all the projects. So it's quite hard to have the global view on all the projects available. So you can you have different players in the market that can bring you this view. For example, CO2 Logic is one of the main player in Europe as part of the South Pole Group. So we have a good overview on the existing projects. And regarding the how and where to register your project, let's say that, for example, Gold Standard really focuses on project with a high impact on sustainable development. So if you have a project with that addresses community services, for example, that is really close to communities, I would recommend Gold Standard. If it's a project that is more like a renewable energy project, VCS will be maybe more efficient. And if it's a nature-based solution project, so reforestation or forest conservation project, I think that Vera is more appropriate. So it depends really on the project you want to certify. So I'm really happy to have this discussion with you afterwards if you want.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Let's take a question from the chat. Dale Gilmartin is asking, what's the typical time frame for achieving carbon credits? I don't know if you need a clarification on that.
I assume it is from a project point of view. So since the implementation of the project until the issuance, I would say it depends, but to give you an average, so you've seen that you have a preliminary phase before the implementation of the project, which is the validation of the project. So it can take up to 1 year, and then you have the project has to run for a certain period of time to create this reduction. So, and this is minimum 1 year. So let's say it's 2 years plus. After this 1 year period, you have to write the monitoring plan and to get this monitoring plan certified. So let's take a few months. So I would say rather roughly 2.5 years. So this is a realistic average.
Thank you, Dale. Give us a thumbs up if you think this answer is correct, or you need a clarification. You can also follow up on the chat. I see no more hands up. We still have questions in the chat. Marco Balucani says, a project that will substitute a raw material that has lower carbon footprint, ratio 1:50, is it considered an impact for carbon neutrality?
Yes, so regarding this question, it's more about the reduction, in fact. So the fact that you are going to substitute a raw material that you are using in your process, for example, and that will help you to divide by 50, what is really good because it's not so frequent, that will help you to reduce and to reduce enough in order to maybe be aligned with the ambition of the Paris Agreement, for example, and to reach this remaining part that could be easily balanced after that in order to get this carbon neutrality achieved. So it won't be considered as a climate project to offset, but it will be integrated in your own carbon footprint if you are using this material, and that will lead you to some reductions that will be easily counterbalanced after that in order to get this carbon neutrality.
Thank you. Marco, if you need some follow-up, you can write it in the chat or raise your hand. While I'm giving the floor to Enrico Marani, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you a lot for the super interesting presentation. I have some doubts concerning the emission of the issuance of certificates. As far as I understood, it's like private companies, private auditing firms that are allowed to issue these certificates, and like they are like issued only once the project has already been able to capture some CO2, some GHG emissions. Is that correct? And there is no like public institution issuing these certificates. And yeah, that's it. I would like to better understand the mechanism. Thank you a lot.
Yes, I take this one. Yeah, thank you for this question. So indeed, you have different players on this market. So you have the project developer, can be a public or private player. There is no restriction. You have the organization that would purchase the carbon credits, also could be public or private, like some public institutions like the European Parliament purchases carbon credits. And you have the standard, which is generally an NGO. So it's an like kind of private player. It's an NGO that is, for example, the gold standard was created by a combination of the WWF and World Resources Institute. So it means that it's a non-profit organization. And then you have the auditors that are mostly private companies. So I would say it's more like there is no intervention of any government or states in the issuance process. It was mentioned in one of the previous questions, the Kyoto Protocol and the CDM. So under the Kyoto Protocol, you have the same mechanism. It's called the Clean Development Mechanism. And there, so it's exactly the same mechanisms, but the issuance body is the United Nations. So we could say it's a public institutions. And these credits were used for compliance reasons, so for the countries to meet their target, or for the companies under the EU ETS to meet their target. But then they can also be used by private companies in the context of the voluntary carbon market. So my answer is that we have both systems, public system under the United Nations, but also private system under the voluntary carbon market, like gold standard or VCS. And your second question was, yes, so one of the conditions is that the emission reduction has to take place before the issuance to make sure that there is an environmental integrity in the mechanism, because if a company purchases the credits and offset the emissions that has already taken place, it needs to be counterbalanced by an emission reduction that has also taken place. So it comes after the reduction.
Thank you, Carlos. We have actually 2 more minutes until the end of this session, and we have already 2 questions in the chat that we can answer in the chat. I'm asking if we can continue a little bit more, because I know there is no other session later. But Georg, if you don't mind, if I can give Maria Santa, Marta the floor first.
Sure.
Maria Santa, please ask us the question.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm quite new to this area, and I actually wanted to pose some questions about how to use this type of tools, or if you can recommend me other type of tools for more research-based projects. For instance, if we are working on a project that is TRL 1 to 4, what would be the advices and what would be the type of information to look to try to be as early as possible carbon neutral, at least? Okay, I don't know if that makes sense.
Carlos, you take that one?
Yes, I'm not sure I fully understood the question. You mean so?
Yes, because from what I'm hearing here, there are projects that are more for private companies and that are more advanced in the field. So if I'm developing a new solution, if it's very, very early, still at the lab level, and we are trying to advance, what would be the type of tools and what would be we're looking for to try to be as early as possible carbon neutral or things like that?
Okay, but
for instance, if we are developing a solution for CO2 capture, okay,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you would like your project
Yes.
to get revenues from carbon credits because it. Okay. Okay. The standards are all the information is public. They use recognized calculation methodologies or tools to make sure that when we evaluate the emission reduction, we use these methodologies that are recognized. So on the one hand, you can check if there is already a methodology that could apply to your solution. So there is always the scope of application of the methodology, etc., described in the methodology. So you can check if it is already the case. Maybe someone had the same idea and had already submitted a methodology that was validated by the standard. But it's a bit more complicated, but it's feasible. You can propose a methodology to evaluate the CO2 absorption, removal, or reduction. And this methodology then will be reviewed and could be accepted by the standard to be used. So for me, the first step will be to check whether there is a methodology, an existing methodology to be used for your project. Or the second step will be to propose yourself a methodology that and see how it can be accepted.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Thank you. I have negotiated 5 more minutes, so we can take a question from Georg and Marco. And meanwhile, Matthew, you can look at the question from Ana Sibila about who's monitoring the global impact. Maybe you can type something there. And also from Endobides about the behavioral change programs, if they qualify. Maybe we can work both at the same time. So Georg and Marco, if you can be quick, please go ahead.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about the role of blockchains for the carbon credits, and what are the blockchains to watch where you can trade already carbon credits and so forth.
It's a very interesting question. I'm not sure I have all the answer. So on the one hand, there is a focus now on how to use blockchain to monitor and to increase the traceability of the emission reduction. So I know that the standard are really looking at how can blockchain increase transparency and be helpful to monitor the emission reduction. So this is under study currently from the project point of view, and from the carbon credit point of view. So you might have seen that there are some cryptocurrencies that are entering the market in order to create a token linked to the CO2, the carbon credits. And I think this is really useful because, first of all, we all know the climate impact of this technology, which is huge. So this is a way really to offset these emissions, and it's also a way to make the market more liquid and more transparent, because you know that there are different registries, and there is not such a transparency on where to trace the carbon credits. So I think it is really useful to make sure that all these carbon credits are traced and there is a full transparency on that.
Thank you, Marco. We have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so quickly, because I would like to go back again to the impact changing the raw material. So the question is, if let's say I'm a manufacturer on renewable energy and I can evaluate how much is my carbon footprint, can I gain carbon credits if, let's say, I change the production methodology and decrease the carbon footprint or not?
Not really if you don't have any certified methodology that covers this kind of situation. So it's I would say I don't think it would be easy, because you will have to create something from scratch specific to this raw material, and you will have to prove that you don't have a business case that works right now, and you need to have this extra financial support from this voluntary mechanism market in order to finance and to develop your solution. Because don't forget that when you talk about climate projects, we are only talking about projects that are not financially viable as is, and they need this support, this additional support from the voluntary market to get live and to deliver this additional avoidance or removal of CO2 emissions.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. With that, we have extinguished the time, and the organizers are telling me we need to stop the webinar. So I would like to thank everyone. Remind that you can contact us. Christophe shared the link to contact us. Remind you again, please do fill the satisfaction survey. Is again the link a click away in your chat, and any questions answered, we will make sure that you receive the answer from our experts. Please do continue participating in the EIC Summit. There's a lot of other sessions interesting today. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, everyone.